Under chandeliers, a rain-soaked mechanic froze as a billionaire knelt and asked, "Will you marry me?" Gasps thundered through the ballroom as grease met silk. Then fate cracked. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Matt Carter wiped oil-stained hands on his worn denim jeans, watching jets glide gracefully through the sky, a bitter reminder of dreams he'd long buried. As a struggling mechanic working endless shifts at a small Texas airport, his daily reality was harsh. Low wages, endless debt, and customers who looked through him as if he were invisible. Beneath the crimson glow of sunset, the tarmac stretched out like an unforgiving expanse of concrete, each oil, slick, and discarded wrench a testament to lives put on hold. The roar of distant engines brought both comfort and pain. Comfort in its familiar rhythm, pain in its reminder that he'd once craved the freedom of flight himself. His family had once run a successful airline maintenance company, a legacy built on his grandfather's skill and his father's tireless work ethic. But when his father fell ill, hospital bills and unpaid loans swallowed their business alive. Matt watched from the sidelines as the hangar doors closed for the last time and the family name faded from the registry. He inherited the debt, the reputation, and one battered set of tools. Every morning, he laced up scuffed boots and forced a steady smile, knowing that today's paycheck wouldn't cover tomorrow's mortgage. He'd grown accustomed to wealthy passengers treating him like another faceless servant on the tarmac, each nod of entitlement cutting deeper than any wrench that slipped from his grasp. Still, Matt stayed humble, driven by the stubborn hope that competence and integrity would one day matter more than the size of one's bank account. He remembered hours spent poring over aviation manuals in his father's study, the smell of engine grease mixing with the scent of old leather-bound ledgers. Those memories fueled him now, even as fatigue weighed down his shoulders and chain-smoking coworkers whispered that his stubborn loyalty would be his downfall. Late one afternoon, as storm clouds gathered on the horizon and the first fat drops of rain splattered across his safety goggles, a luxurious Gulfstream jet made an emergency landing, its engine roaring unnaturally loud. The pilot's voice crackled through the radio. "Mayday, mayday, fuel pressure, critical." Matt's heart lurched. He sprinted toward the gleaming silver fuselage, thunder cracking overhead. The airport manager's boots pounded behind him. "Carter," the manager barked, rainwater tracing rivulets down his scowl. "It's Richard Kent's private jet. Billionaire, owns half of Dallas. You messed this up, Carter, and we're all out of jobs." Matt's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't heard his name spoken with such urgency in years. The weight of expectation pressed in on him like the storm itself. He knelt beside the jet's landing gear, fingers trembling as he reached for the inspection lamp. Every drop of water on the metal surface glinted like a spotlight aimed directly at him. In that charged silence, he felt the full force of his own desperation. The unpaid bills, his father's fading strength, the years of silent sacrifice. The thunder rolled again, as if the sky itself demanded an answer. Matt swallowed hard, braced himself, and whispered under his breath, "I won't let them down." As Matt Carter stepped onto the rain-slicked tarmac, the Gulfstream's polished hull reflected the torn clouds above, each bead of water shimmering like a warning. The jet's door swung open with a soft hiss, and Richard Kent emerged, his tailored suit untouched by the downpour, posture rigid with command, eyes cold with impatience. "What's taking so long? I have places to be," Richard snapped, voice sharp as lightning slicing the sky. He surveyed Matt's grease-stained uniform with thinly veiled contempt, as though the mechanic's dirt were an affront to his dignity. Every word knifed through Matt's conscience, but he swallowed the sting. He inhaled the metallic scent of fuel and rain, steeled himself against panic, and knelt beside the wing strut. Beneath the layered panels, he located the fracture in the fuel line, a hidden fissure smaller than a fingernail but capable of catastrophe at takeoff. Normally, this repair demanded a full day's labor: remove the outer cowling, replace the hose, recalibrate the pressure sensors, run a battery of diagnostics. Yet the distant rumble of thunder and the owner's clipped impatience propelled Matt's determination. "Give me 3 hours," he said, voice a steady anchor in the storm. Lightning cleaved the sky as he pried open the access panel. Water sluiced across the wing, drumming a frantic rhythm. Matt's fingers, slick with rain and oil, maneuvered a new braided hose into place, Each twist of the wrench spoke of years spent beneath tail fins and turbines, nights when the hangar lights burned long after his strength had waned. The storm enveloped him in its raw symphony, wind shrieking through the jet's intakes, the hiss of pneumatic tools, his own breath thundering in his ears. Inside the black-tinted limousine parked yards away, Richard watched through a sliver of glass, his arms folded in guarded disbelief. At first, his brow furrowed in scorn, but as minutes bled into hours, the billionaire's posture softened. He saw Matt's sinewy arms strain against the weight of the task, his jaw clenched in grim resolve, droplets of water tracing rivulets down his face like tears of defiance. Behind the veneer of wealth and power, Richard recognized a reflection of himself, the fierce will to conquer a problem no one believed he could master. By nightfall, the storm eased. Matt closed the final panel, activated the ignition sequence, and listened as the Gulfstream's engine hummed to life, a sound more melodic than any symphony. Exhausted, he emerged from beneath the wing, shoulders slumped, but eyes bright with triumph. Richard Kent approached through the lingering mist, coat collar turned up against the damp. Without a word, he extended a hand, an olive branch in the form of a firm clasp, and met Matt's gaze. "I owe you an apology," he murmured, voice low with sincerity. "You did incredible work." Matt nodded, chest still pounding, as the weight of praise settled over him, heavier than any bolt he'd torqued. The billionaire's gaze held genuine respect now as he stepped back and closed the jet's door. Matt stood alone on the wet tarmac, rain-washed and victorious, wondering if this unexpected connection would ever extend beyond a handshake and a whispered acknowledgement. Matt Carter slipped through the grand entrance of the Dallas Opera House under glittering chandeliers and swirls of silk gowns, every polished marble floor tile echoing his hesitant steps. He paused at the threshold, chest tight beneath his off-the-rack suit, cheeks flushed by the hushed gas of guests who smelled his aftershave, and wondered at this unexpected addition to their gilded affair. Servers drifted past, silver trays balanced with flutes of champagne that caught the light like promises. The scent of caviar and truffle wandered through the foyer, alien to Matt's usual world of diesel and hydraulic fluid. He pressed a trembling hand against his lapel, feeling the coarse weave of his jacket, bought secondhand, tailored crudely at best, and wondered if he'd swallowed a lie by accepting Richard Kent's invitation. When Richard appeared, the billionaire's grin was broad, his gaze sincere as he wound Matt into the knot of high society luminaries. "Everyone, this is Matt Carter, the best mechanic in Texas," Richard announced, voice carrying above the murmur. The crowd turned, eyebrows rising like drawn swords, then softened into polite applause. Matt swallowed, nodding, heart pounding against ribs as faces, fashion magazines in human form, tilted to inspect him. He saw curiosity flicker, suspicion waver, then grudging respect settle in their eyes, as though a machine had become flesh, capable of more than idle polish and patience. They moved through the ballroom's golden haze, guests offering clipped compliments. "Extraordinary feat, Mr. Carter," said a senator's wife, fingernails flashing and voice sweet as candy. A tech magnate slipped a card into Matt's hand, eyes bright. "If ever you want to consult on our prototype engines—" Matt gave a stiff smile, uncertain whether to laugh or bow. He felt the warm weight of possibility pressing in, yet each accolade carved deeper into his self-doubt. Did he truly deserve this stage? A memory pulled him back to his father's dusty garage, the scent of worn leather and grease cartridges, the two of them side by side, teaching him that work had dignity only when done honestly without show. Here, beneath crystalline chandeliers, honesty shimmered like a fragile ornament, beautiful but easily broken. Richard guided him to a raised platform where speeches began. Crystal glasses chimed in polite anticipation. The billionaire spoke first of visions and ventures, the ebb and flow of enterprises built on trust and mastery. Then Richard's tone shifted, warmth threading through confidence. "2 weeks ago, a man fixed my jet in impossible conditions. That man, Matt Carter, is here tonight." A spotlight swept the room. Matt felt the air grow thick, the murmurs hush into a stunned hush. The audience leaned forward, some with envy, some with awe, sensing that Robert's world of money and influence could not exist without the hands that made flight possible. Their collective gaze made Matt's palms sweat beneath his suit sleeves. From his vantage, he saw admiration ripple through the crowd, saw the glint of new respect in eyes that had once dismissed him. Yet as applause swelled, a knot of conflict tightened in his chest. The small hangar where he'd grown up, the broken tools, his father's muffled cough in the next room, they pulled him back from this gilded precipice. Could he abandon the humble roots that forged him? Did he belong among these polished ideals and lofty ambitions? The music swelled, voices drifted, and Matt remained frozen in that moment of reckoning, caught between the world he knew and the dazzling horizon unfolding before him. Richard Kent descended from the dais in measured steps, the chandelier's glow catching the edges of his tailored jacket, turning him from untouchable magnate to a man laid bare. Silence rippled through the ballroom, as though the collective breath of 200 guests had frozen mid-inhale. Matt Carter's pulse thundered in his ears, each beat a drum of fate. He stood rigid, chest tight, gaze locked on Richard's unsteady posture, an unfamiliar tremor in the billionaire's usually iron resolve. Richard paused at Matt's side, shoulders squared yet vulnerable, and spoke so softly that the hush magnified each syllable. "And there's one more thing, Matt." His voice wavered, tinted with an honesty few had ever glimpsed. Beneath the polished veneer of wealth, Matt recognized a raw plea that mirrored his own hidden longings. The hunger for respect, the ache for genuine connection. Guests craned their necks, sensing the gravity of a moment that transcended glitz and gala. "I've spent a lifetime surrounded by people chasing my fortune," Richard continued, gaze flickering to the assembled faces as if searching for an ally. "But no one has ever worked for my respect as selflessly as you did." In that declaration, every late-night vigil Matt had kept under a wing strut, every soaked wrench and trembling fingertip was honored. Richard's next words carried the weight of a promise and a transformation. "Matt Carter, would you marry me?" The question hung, electric, sparking gasps that echoed against marble columns. Matt's world constricted to the space between his racing heart and Richard's earnest eyes. He tasted the tang of champagne on his lips, smelled polished tuxedo linen, and the faint trace of engine oil still clinging to his collar, the two scents entwined like past and future. Around them, the crowd dissolved into a blur of glittering masks, each attendee reduced to witness. Time slowed. Matt sensed the enormity of choice, to step into an unimaginable alliance, crossing the chasm between grease-stained reality and gilded aspiration. He pictured the cramped hangar where he'd learned the language of machines, his father's proud nod echoing through memory. He felt the sting of contempt as passengers brushed past him before that night of rain-soaked heroism. He tasted the iron resolve that had refused to bow under pressure. A smile flickered on Richard's lips, tentative, hopeful, transforming the room's skepticism into an ache of suspense. Matt inhaled deeply, letting every fragment of his journey crystallize into a single answer. When he spoke, his voice carried the resonance of a man reclaimed from invisibility. "Yes, I will." In that instant, the hush shattered. Applause thundered, swelling with the fervor of genuine admiration rather than polite courtesy. Hands clapped raw, glasses raised in salute, and eyes shone with tears of incredulous joy. Richard gathered Matt into an embrace that bridged their disparate worlds, a clasp of equality and devotion. Beneath the crystalline chandeliers, they stood entwined. A mechanic and a mogul, bound not by wealth but by honor, vulnerability, and a love forged in the crucible of respect. As the crowd surged around them, cheering, Matt felt the solidity of destiny beneath his feet. The broken wings of past doubts were mended, not by fortune alone, but by the steadfast integrity and humility he had carried like a talisman. This was more than a proposal fulfilled. It was the culmination of justice restored, the victory of true worth over gilded pretense, and the beginning of a shared journey anchored in love and mutual esteem.